Namaskar everyone and welcome to the Gita Satsang. So let's start with the Prarthana. By the Guru's grace and the will of Sri Krishna, we have all assembled for this Gita Satsang. May we have their guidance to be able to learn and adopt the things which will help us to grow spiritually. Let us chant the shlokas. Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय हरये परमात्मने प्रणतक्लेशनाशाय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः। वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुं कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय हरये परमात्मने प्रणतः क्लेशनाशाय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः। नमोऽस्तु ते व्यासविशालबुद्धे पुल्लारविन्दाय तपत्रनेत्र येन त्वया भारततैलपूर्णः प्रज्वालितो ज्ञानमयप्रदीपः रामानुजदयापात्रं ज्ञानवैराग्यभूषणं श्रीमद्वेङ्कटनाथार्यं वन्दे वेदान्तदेशिकम् यो नित्यमच्युतपदाम्बुजयुग्मरुग्म व्यामोहतस्तदितराणि तृणाय मेने अस्मद्गुरोर्भगवतोऽस्य दयैकसिन्धोः रामानुजस्य चरणौ शरणं प्रपद्ये. So with prayers at the lotus feet of the Acharyas, let us go to our topic for today. So last class we had seen in the 17th shloka how Krishna was telling about the need for all of us to be moderate in our eating and sleeping habits. So now he is going to talk a little more about how to focus the mind for somebody who wants to do meditation. So in the 18th shloka of the 6th chapter, Krishna says, Yada viniyatam chittam atman yevavatishtate nisprah sarva kamebhyo yukta ityuchyate tada. When the mind is subdued, that kind of a subdued mind, it rests in the self, in the Atman alone. Then such a person who is free from all craving for objects of desire, such a person is said to be harmonized. We say that such a person is in a state of harmony. So what Krishna is telling in this shloka is about who is this person who is said to be in a condition of harmony. Who is this person who is in that harmonized state and qualified to do practice of yoga. So anybody who has lost all the desires which previously were present, only somebody who has given up all these desires, such a person is eligible, is qualified to do yoga abhyasa. Now we may think that this is like such a big task. It's not possible for us because we already still have so many desires. But is it really so difficult? What should we do then in that case? The first part of the shloka is telling about this. By training the mind to repeatedly think about the Atman, it is possible to lose all other worldly desires. So the way to get to this stage where we don't have other desires is to train our mind to constantly keep thinking about the Atma. At first, it may appear very difficult. Maybe we can do it only for a short amount of time. That's okay. Whatever time we are able to do, for a very short time it may be, but we should be able to start with that. So sit down for a few minutes. Maybe it can be only just 2 minutes in the beginning or 5 minutes or 10 minutes. And as the mind keeps going here and there and thinking of this and that, pull the mind back and focus it on your Atma. Think about the greatness of the Atma. Think about how this Atma is different from the Sharira. That what we are identifying with the Sharira is wrong. It is the Atma within which is the special object. It has the special guna because of which we are able to do so many things. So stop, having a remembrance of the body and sharira. Instead, train your mind to keep thinking about the Atma. So when we start like this, initially it may appear as if it is very difficult, but just like with practice, everything comes into our control. Like that, slowly, as we keep doing it repeatedly, we will find that it becomes easier for us to focus on this meditation. And as we keep thinking more and more about the Atma, and we start getting more and more joy from that experience, then we will see that gradually the other worldly desires will start fading away from us. Like here, the Vyakyatas give the example. In modern times nowadays, we talk about computers, laptops, even our phones, and we are able to do so many things with them because there is a program which has set the instructions for what has to be done, what has to happen when a particular button is pressed, what should happen next. Now, if this computer or laptop or whatever software you're using on any system gets infested with a virus, what happens then? Although the instructions have been set by the program, but then it begins to malfunction. Why that malfunctioning happens? Because of the effect of that virus. So now what has to be done? They have to run an antivirus program to destroy that virus. Similarly, when we sit to meditate, we find lot of distractions, lot of thoughts which are coming and diverting our mind. What is this? So the program is there within us that we should be focusing on the Atma, but the antivirus has come. What is this antivirus now? It is all the papas which we have accumulated from past karmas in so many past janmas. So those papas, those vasanas, they are like the virus which has come into our mind. And because of that, the mind runs behind this and that desire, this and that thought, the yearning to get material things in this world. And when we run behind that, when the mind runs behind that, then there is no ability to focus. So if we want to get rid of these past karmas, then what is the antivirus that we need? That antivirus which is required is karma yoga, doing actions as an offering to the Lord. That is what is the antivirus program which is required. So here, what we are going to learn in this shloka is we have to understand that if we keep slowly increasing our ability, gradually we are increasing our ability to focus on the Atma, to contemplate on the Atma, and to get joy from within ourselves from this Atmanubhava. When we get that ability, then the other desire, that joy, that experience is something which is so totally different from the other things in this world, that slowly we will find that compared to this joy of Atmanubhava, the other desires in the world are very feeble. They have no strength at all. They are actually not at all joyful for us. If we get to that stage, then we are fit for practice of yoga. So just like suppose there is somebody who is living in a small hut, in a small house, and that person gradually, because his earning capacity increases, such a person now has a very big house and is living in a very palatial bungalow type of house. Now, once the person has moved into that big house, at any point, will he hanker for that small hut in which he was living before? Will he think that, oh, I want to live in that small hut? No, he will not, because he's now got a bigger and better thing. So he's finding it much more pleasant to live in that big house. Similarly, that is a worldly example. If we compare that to the state of somebody who started doing yoga abhyasa, then what the acharyas are telling is that when we start getting joy from the Atma, from the Atmanubhava, then that joy, that bliss is something which is so strong, that is so much greater and so much deeper, that we will stop running behind other things in this world, in the Laukika field, to get the same kind of joy, because we will realize that whatever happens in this worldly life is not capable of giving us that same superior quality of joy that we get during the time when we are in meditation. So developing that ability is a gradual process, but we have to start somewhere. So we must start doing that. And once we have the experience of Atmanubhava, then all the desires for worldly gains, for worldly things will slowly vanish little by little. So that is what Krishna explained in this shloka. in the 18th shloka. Now we move on to the 19th shloka. So there he's talking further about how is the mind of the yogi who is having this control. So he says, Yatha Deepo Nivatastho Nengate Sopama Smrita Yogino Yata Chittasya Yunjato Yogamatmanaha. The controlled mind of a yogi who practices yoga is compared to a lamp which does not flicker when it is placed in a windless spot. So here Krishna is comparing the mind, the Atma and the glow, the Jyoti of the Atma to a lamp and the glowing of the lamp. Now, we have commonly noticed that sometimes during certain festivals, like say Deepavali or Tulsi Puja or some other occasions, what do? We light a lamp and we want to place it outside the house. We want to keep it in the outside place. When we do that, we've noticed that if there is a lot of breeze, if there is a lot of strong wind blowing, then that lamp flickers and it is not able to glow steadily. Sometimes what may happen, if the wind is very strong, it may even get extinguished, right? But suppose we keep this lamp in an enclosed space, or we keep it in a place where there is no air current at all, there is no air blowing around that lamp at all, then what happens? It glows in a steady manner. Why did the flickering happen? The flickering happens if there is disturbance in the air around the lamp. But if there is no flickering, if there is no disturbance at all, the lamp will not flicker. It will just steadily at the same pace keep glowing on and on. Similarly, Krishna is telling here that this Atma and the glow of the Atma is exactly like this. If the lamp has to glow steadily, there should not be disturbance of air around it. Similarly, if the Atma has to glow, if we need to be able to focus on the Atma, then the disturbance should not be there. What disturbance should not be there? The disturbance which is being caused by the sense organs, the disturbance being caused by the desires which come because we are attached to the sense pleasures. So, that disturbance, if it is not there, then the Atman will glow and we will be able to experience this Atmanubhava. We will be able to experience the joy from the Atma very clearly. So that means if we want to have that Atmanubhava, we must make sure that the senses are firmly under our control. Only such a person who has the senses firmly under control is able to steadily meditate on the Atma. So here, if we think of this, now this is something, the problem of, the mind running behind things can be caused to bad people. I mean, people who have negative tendencies, those who are always lost in sense pleasure. That is one thing. But it can also attack those people who are supposedly on the right path. Like if we take the example of Jada Bharata, he was a king who gave up the kingdom, he gave up everything, and with that Vairagya, he came and sat in the forest, thinking that he wants to focus on the Lord. So he tried to create a situation where everything was conducive for his sadhana. There was no disturbance around him. But then, in one single moment, when that mother deer gave birth to that baby and that baby deer was about to drown in the water, he felt pity. And by feeling pity, he brought out that baby and kept it with him, and he gradually developed attachment to that baby. So even that kind of attachment, it was out of compassion that he did that. It was out of having this sahanubhuti for that animal that he did that. But even that kind of a good intention can lead the mind astray, and it can prove to be the disturbance which is going to not allow Atmanubhava. So once he got attached to that baby deer, then he was not able to at all concentrate and do anything. All the time he was only thinking about that. And that anxiety about the deer kept on growing bigger and bigger. So somebody who had given up everything and come to the forest to do sadhana also got off track. So if that can happen to somebody like Bharata, who was such a great tapasvi, imagine our condition. Similarly, we have seen the example, we know also of Saubhari Muni, who was so great a tapasvi that he was able to sit underwater and meditate there. And when he was meditating, he was in that, lost in that Atmanubhava. But at some one fine moment, he opened his eyes and he happened to see a few fish swimming around very happily, the mother fish with her babies, and he saw them all enjoying, and he thought, if these animals, the fish, are able to have this all this joy and pleasure, why am I sitting like this? Why I should also not experience that pleasure? And that one moment of distraction was enough to break all the tapas that he had done, and he got off track from his sadhana. So this can happen to the best of the tapasvis. So it is important at all times to stay alert, that the senses are kept firmly under control. Only when the senses are kept under control constantly, then the mind steadily, it will meditate on the Atma. So if we want the lamp to glow steadily, we are going to keep it in an enclosure. Similarly, if we want our mind to focus on the Atman, if we want to meditate and obtain Atmanubhava, we have to keep it enclosed. How do we keep the mind enclosed? By withdrawing it from all material distractions. So that should be the focus of our sadhana. So if that lamp has to glow, one thing is you need to keep it away from the air current. So you must close it and keep, so that there is no disturbance to its glowing. But second thing that is needed is, after some time, if the oil in the lamp gets exhausted, it will not be able to burn anymore, isn't it? So we need to periodically keep adding oil into that lamp. Similarly, just keeping the mind under control, just giving up the attachment to sense pleasures is not going to be enough for the atma to glow. What we have to do for the atma to keep progressing in its sadhana, we have to periodically keep doing karma yoga. We have to perform actions. We have to do those actions as an offering to the Lord. We have to do those actions with the bhava that we are doing it as service of the Lord. We have to do it with the bhava that the Lord Himself is getting it done through me. We have to do all our actions with the attitude that through that action I am serving the Lord. I am doing kainkariya to the Lord. If we can keep doing that, then just like we are adding oil in the lamp, then by regular performance of this karma yoga, it is possible for us to keep our atma glowing always also. Even better, sometimes we may find that, just to think about the jivatma, to think about the greatness of the atma, sometimes we find that that is not coming easily to us, because we don't know how to visualize the atma. We don't know what to think of the atma. Does it have a form? Does it not have a form? Like, how do we visualize that? That can feel very difficult. So if that is the case, then make the form of the Lord as the enclosure. Make that the thing on which you are focusing. And your bhakti for the Lord, keep that as the oil. If we do this, then the Atman will always keep glowing. Then there is no question of the mind going astray here and there. There is no question of us not being able to do yoga abhyasa. If we find it difficult to concentrate on the formless Atma, then try to focus on the form of the Lord. Try to have the devotion for the Lord, which is going to motivate you to keep doing the meditation. So this is something which Krishna has explained in this shloka. Krishna, of course, is talking about how the yogi who is having a controlled mind is going to practice yoga. Just like a lamp does not flicker when it is in a windless spot, similarly, the yogi who is having mind under control is going to be able to practice yoga in a proper way. This point about using bhakti as the oil and making the Lord's rupa and swarupa as the enclosure. This is something which the acharyas have told additionally. Okay, now we move on to the 20th shloka. So here, now actually from this shloka onwards, 20, 21, 22, and so on, he is going to describe different kinds of situations of different people who are practicing yoga. So today out of that we will take up the first one, which is the 20th shloka. So in this he says, yatro paramate chittam niruddham yoga sevaya yatra chaivatmanatmanam pashyannatmani tushyati. So he is telling that when the mind of somebody has been restrained by the practice of yoga, when the mind has been controlled by the practice of yoga, such a person gets infinite bliss. They get the never ending kind of ananda. And by seeing the Atman by the mind, one is satisfied by Atma alone. So one does not hanker and run behind other things in this world, but gets pleasure only from experience of the Atma. So normally we know that there are many things which people want in this world, and there is this concept of what are called as the Purusharthas. So we say dharma, artha, kama, moksha, they are the Purusharthas. Now, in a sense, this Purushartha means something. The Purusha refers to the Atman, and Artha means something which is desired. So you can say that Purushartha means something which the Atman wants. So, what is it that the Atma wants? All whatever we desire cannot be Purushartha, isn't it? If we have yearning for so many things, we have so many wants, we have so many desires, there are so many things we want to achieve and attain. All those cannot be considered as Purushartha. Only what is sanctioned by the Shastras, only what is allowed by the Shastras, that can be Purushartha. Only that which lifts us up, which uplifts us, only that can be Purushartha. And that is why we talk about this Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. Everything, literally speaking, Purushartha, if you say desired by the person, then everything will fall in that. But everything is not sanctioned by the Shastras. Everything is not going to be a desire that you fulfill that, you will get uplifted. Definitely not. So we must remember that considering this yoga abhyasa as a purushartha. That is what Krishna is telling Arjuna here. That if you pull the mind away from material things and focus it on the Atman, then such a person who practices yoga like this, they will get the purushartha. What is that desire which they will get, which is fulfilled? They get total enjoyment. They are going to enjoy total bliss. From where? From the Atmanubhava itself. So here again, Krishna is emphasizing the need to pull the mind away from material things and to keep it focused, always to keep it focused on the Atman. So person who practices this kind of yoga will start experiencing Ananda from within himself. The Ananda will come from his experience of the Atma. To be able to understand what this is, we need to start practicing at least in a small scale as much as we can. It's not as if Krishna is telling us, he's not telling Arjuna also. He told Arjuna, you get up and stand and fight and do your duty. But why he's telling all this? To explain to Arjuna what should be the attitude of somebody who is doing yoga abhyasa. Because performing karma is one part, but to be able to perform your karma well, you need to have your mind under your control. You need to have your senses under your control. Only such a person who is having control of mind, control of the senses, such a person is going to be able to perform karma yoga properly. So to that, the desire for things is never going to be over. So if we keep running behind things in this world, we are going to keep finding that there is something or the other which we want more and more. So that is not the going to give us happiness. Here Krishna is telling that we have to do yoga abhyasa so that we are able to train our mind to focus on the Atma. We will find in the next chapter when Krishna starts talking, he will say that go beyond this also. Instead of trying to get joy only from this Kaivalyanubhava, which is experience of the self, of the Atman, go further and you will get joy by focusing on me, keeping me as the object of your sadhana. That he will tell further. But for now, he is telling at least at the level, rather than being a normal person who is just lost in worldly pleasures, somebody who is just caught up with the mundane things, with all the routine things that happen in our daily life. I get up in the morning, I do my work, I do whatever is my duty, I go to work, I come back, I eat, I sleep, I have some entertainment, I have this, I have that, I have this problem, I have that problem, I solve this problem, I solve that problem. Is that all that is meant to be in our life? Why have we got this Manusha Janma? It is so rare to get a Manusha Janma. We could have been born like some Tiryak, we could have been born like a plant, like some animal, and we would have not had all this jnana that we are capable of getting in this Manushya Janma. So when we've been given this human form, the purpose is to go back to where we came from. We've come from the Lord and we need to get back to Sri Vaikuntha and reach his lotus feet. That is the whole purpose of getting the human Janma. That too, when we are fortunate enough to be in Satsanga, then we must think more and more about this. There should be some difference in the way how a sadhaka is leading his life and the way an ordinary person is leading his life. If I'm only going to do little bit, let it be little bit, but let it be the starting point. That does not mean that, okay, I've been doing this, I'm saying the same stotras, I'm saying the same shlokas, I'm doing the same level of anushtana from the past so many years, then that does not mean that I have progressed. I have to take active efforts to try and do more, to increase the intensity of my practice, to increase the quality of my sadhana. And when we keep focusing on that, and we are thinking all the time, just like in this world, if we think that, okay, I want to get this particular, title. Like, let us say I'm studying, and when I'm studying, I want to complete my graduation. Then I want to do my post graduation. Then I want to do my PhD. That becomes a goal, and all the time I'm thinking about that. So I will work towards it. Similarly, there may be other desires that we have in this world to which we are working, but only if we have a similar desire to make to have adhyatmika unnati, if we are having a desire to make spiritual progress, then only we will be driven to do something for that. So, what Krishna is telling is a person who is doing yoga abhyasa should be capable of pulling the mind away from distractions, should make efforts to pull the mind away from distractions and focus it on the Atma. Because as you slowly start experiencing the joy from the Atma, you realize that this joy is not coming out of anything else. It is far, far superior to any joy that you get from your worldly experiences. So, understanding that, we must start small and keep practicing regularly so that we progress in our sadhana. So, with that, we have come to the end of our topic for today. We will stop here, and in the next satsang, we will continue with the next shloka and see what more Krishna is telling us. So, as we complete the satsang, let us offer kritagnyata, gratitude to the lotus feet of Sri Krishna and Guru for guiding us, for inspiring us to join this satsang, to start this satsang, and let us pray for their blessings and grace to always be on us. Thank you, everybody, for attending, and we will meet again next Thursday. Namaskara.